plasma so bra malaria war na fe obenom herbal drugs so say hepa plus eno ene sisi nipaduan because of say e general well being no wonu mo apom de ni si pi ni sita me pa twa yem fra na mesero ne nsa ntumi nkabi yakọ first video na aba o say the 1979 Iran hostage crisis eno ne first video a edikan no first video e wo ye dwumadie so ye hwa ba sisi a
The IRGC Quds Force is Iran's primary military actor.
On November 4, 1979, the revolution in Iran took an unexpected turn. Iranian students stormed the US embassy in Tehran and held dozens of personnel and diplomats hostage. The revolution had already altered Iran's relationship with the United States. Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, who was a close US ally, was toppled, and Iranians were ready to turn a new page in which the US no longer had a role in the country. The students' action were an immediate response to the US decision to allow Iran's deposed Shah to come to the United States for treatment. Iranians demanded that the US hand over their deposed Shah, who was despised for his relationship with the Americans. They insisted he be tried for crimes he committed when he was in power. But the animosity towards the US stemmed from a deeper conflict. The Americans and the British had controlled the bulk of Iran petroleum reserves for decades. When Iranian Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh announced his plans to nationalize the country's oil industry, the CIA and British intelligence orchestrated a coup against him in 1953 and put Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, the last Shah of Iran, in power. The 1953 coup was later invoked as a justification for overthrowing the Shah and the animosity towards the US. The hostage crisis in 1979 was another reaction to the long involvement the US had in Iran's economy and politics, and it soon became one of the biggest US diplomatic crises in American history. The students seized 66 hostages, mostly diplomats and embassy employees. After a period of time, a total of 14 hostages were released, but 52 hostages remained in the embassy compound for 444 days. The US president at the time, Jimmy Carter, failed to resolve the crisis. He tried economic sanctions, negotiations, and even military intervention, but nothing worked. The American public grew impatient for resolution. After extensive negotiations, the hostages were released on January 20, 1981. But President Carter paid the price. His failure to resolve the hostage crisis cost him the presidency. He lost the presidential election in 1980 to Ronald Reagan. The day the hostages were released, the day Reagan was inaugurated. 14 years after the embassy siege, the crisis left a legacy of mistrust between Iran and the United States, from which they never recovered.
Right, abusia enti said the etie ana yakwa kwahwe e dia ba no ofa nsema no ka and ya share video no e de ahyemu ekena no over just my enti essentially sisi
we see ya omuye de ombe no na ya to laba no say no a yatimi abubu sha security ni network revolution ni nso hia security pa enti no the clerics, Islamic clerics, no more, no, almost I could trans no more draw a new constitution.
Okay.
The constitution no more draw, no, almost who say, almost here a very strong army beer. A name of a mere army Juma. A be mere security, ama near Atimia Cosro ama home. Into a new cofa by no more created the friend Iran's Revolutionary Guards.
Okay.
Womo strong abibia ya create a omo na ebe abebo revolution no ho ban womo adwuma no omo mi akoko baabi enema ambe ya ebetimi secure Iran for adie. The book now kind the same thing. No. Page 17. And the profile of
Iran's revolutionary
gas.
January 3rd, 2020. Or say the IRGC. The IRGC is estimated to have more than 190,000 active personnel. Iran's Islamic Revolution Guard Corps was set up 40 years ago to defend the country's Islamic system and to provide a counterweight to the regular armed forces. It has since become a major military, political and economic force in Iran, with close ties of the supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and many other senior figures. The IRGC is estimated to have more than 190,000 active personnel, boost its own ground forces, navy and air force, and oversees Iran's strategic weapons. The IRGC exerts influence elsewhere in the Middle East by providing money, weapons, technology, training, and advice to all allied governments and armed groups through its shadowy overseas operations arm, the gas, Jerusalem force.
Jerusalem.
The goods. Goods.
Wow. Jerusalem.
Goods
force.
QUDS. Goods
force.
Okay, that is Jerusalem. Right.
The same information about magazine with the Middle East.
Brothers in Arms.
And also December 2003. The same, what kind of second video. No.
In the 1980s and 1990s, is it Shiat, right? Iran's intelligence services and the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps hosted many meetings in Tehran with extremist groups, including Sunni organizations such as the Palestinians, Islamic Jihad, Egypt, Gamma al-Islamiyah, and Kurdistan Workers Party from Turkey and Algeria's armed Islamic group. Tehran provided funds and training for several of these groups.
You can hear second video.
After meeting Simbiasio. And you ran for more, sir. Topa could you would be no. Topa share mine.
Oh, dear.
North Korea, or
every video. North Korea for the because almost was out to pay share money. Russia for Sukubi. Yeah, as a perception, send me back. Okay, we say, what second video? Say war by proxy. Iran's growing footprint in the Middle East. And only a second video, but answer no. Me can say, number of women can say, Mohana maybe friend from Germany. And I say, Mr. Dame, me share video be a war a year Facebook. Wake Up Africa. Now can say, me can say, who diagro. Now me friend, pardon them who no crew. Woman can say, someone answer second video no. Nina answer my minister will sit down. Okay. Na Nina no how many sit down no. Ana nipa be boss man no. O man estimate a man. Ti Nina no friend ka chair no. Ska na say e pem no kakra. Ti na no na say hwe ka ozo no. Ana ofa na man of friend. Ozo estimate to the man with the same material everything no. Na je say ozo a check nipa no de nim half. Ana de bo no mama na say for pa. Enti me nua po bi amana board down so ama dan be gina ya. Insan ozo ruchi ho. Amansan dia tum no en chen so de board down so nyina ye papa dwuma bia wodi bia no papa dan ho so ha onya o ma de adwuma mo ma na from twetwetwetwom na se na ni teacher na so da bi papa na okofoforo so de bia me ka me si ni nyuma papa wo ye nti no 16 regions o Ghana ha no or branch o ba bia enti ba bia wa wo tie nka bia no de opa dwuma ko me board down so abono aboni ye no sampa sika wutua na so adwuma no wanyam na bro so no a Ozo Roofing. Enti bomodin so be from wo frɛ Ozo Roofing na 0249647748 abishafo no bejo so 0249647748 ana 0205053365 0205053365
also roofing on be Joso on be cow Daniel podium amount estimate a hold one on be amawa bibia be konkan or mono be kon shenka crack ya more than no what you see can be a second video was a war by proxy Iran's growing footprint in the Middle East Yankoshe as second video Emra.
The IRGC Quds Force is Iran's primary military actor in the Middle East. It competes with countries like the United States by training, advising, and equipping sub-state forces, including Shia militias in Iraq, Hezbollah in Lebanon.
In this image, we see a training facility on the eastern border of Lebanon. We see a small little valley that goes down. This has a series of berms that are alternating. One's on the left, the next one's on the right. And what this is a training course for armored personnel carriers.
Iran's goal with a base like the one in Lebanon is to improve the capabilities of its local allies. It also has them in Iran itself, where it can bring individuals from all of these locations.
This image is of the Imam Ali training facility in Iran. It's just on the outskirts of Tehran. It was a small facility until about 2008, and it's now much larger, much more comprehensive, much more capable. As a whole, is training personnel to operate in guerrilla warfare, irregular warfare type scenarios. There are firing ranges, and what happens is recruits or trainees come in and they'll try to run through the course shooting at targets that are placed in various locations. This is very important when you're doing urban fighting.
Every offensive cost each side an average of 15,000 dead.
One of the things that Iran recognized in the 1980s in its war with Iraq is that Iran was never going to be a major conventional power. Between 2011 and 2019, we see a lot more Shia militia and other fighters that work with the IRGC Quds Force in Yemen, in Syria, in Iraq, in Lebanon, in Afghanistan, Pakistan, Bahrain. The reason Iran has more training facilities is it's got more fighters to train.
Right, your second video no and so yakwa akoshe ede aba war by proxy Iran's growing footprint in the Middle East. Over yakwa your second video number.
Na the entire yakwe video say no. Yeah, identify the king of the south.
Yes.
Because you see the kings of the east, the king of the north,
yes.
And the king of the south. And to come and say baby we are. Now the kind of better first blue near the king of the south, or no be attack the king of the north.
Okay. Ofama for no quantifi.
Obeko no akwa attack. Na na wie no be basa. Na no so na be ma the king of the north. Obe seize the Middle East.
Okay.
No be seize the Middle East. No ye be wie no say me can be about abomination of desolation.
Yes.
So abesizi wama as a visitor. No aba okuratumi dia. Ene oba be enforce the system. Ewo oba ade sanctuary.
Okay.
Enti the area yahu the kings of the east. Yahu the king of the north. And you ever hear the king of the south.
Okay.
No dear a true trasem. If it's a no or the band to quem.
Yes.
It's the true trasem or the band to quem. And you hear Middle East one ma. Krubiani wa we to trasem chain Iran.
Okay.
Or starting 79. Omo be the masses revolution. Ombe 2 the Shah of Iran. Ko sizi American embassy. And we no. Womo anya say Islamic revolution and woman deba. Into woman the answer almost sunk of wasn't Sunny Okenka.
Yes.
Yababo, no what tear or baby, I will be a Yababo, no what tear or baby, opus or could be, and to almost say Sika, almost say idea, almost say training. Send your Benyan Kofua, Ombebua, no Motimiaku, a condeno. And the third video, no answer near as my Mekan only say. Iran approval to the world to say, in fact, Onu obey the king of the south.
Yes.
ono no oba be ka entoko edikan oba be prank ko edikan not ama not be ba be na say not nso oba no ono neto forces kan
yes
endi no enya asem ketwa na beba ba ansa ne be hwe third video no ma no asi
ofa sa ntokwa onchi na meribu ka say yen share him say third world war be banana
yes third world war afrina
see no wa be kire
beba so final and we be kan Iran is the king of the you can see how we are
okay. Or say Iran is the king of radical Islam. You can free book of 3 seasons why Iran is the king of the south of Bible prophecy. Page 2 near Kanye Free. Or say since 1994, Iran has gone on to dominant headlines and destabilize the Middle East more than any other power, and it has done so by leveraging its influence over Islamic extremism. Iran's takeover of radical Islam goes back to 1979 when Islamists overthrew the Shah of Iran. The country's new leader then developed Iran into the world's largest state sponsor of terrorism. In the name of Islamic fundamentalism, Iranian leaders have sponsored abductions, assassinations, bombings, and other acts of violence. They have supported terrorists from Hezbollah, Hamas, Palestine Islamic Jihad, the Taliban, and Al-Qaeda, as well as Shia militants who attacked American and coalition troops in Iraq thousands of times. Iran also has propped up the regime of Bashar Assad in Syria, where tens of thousands of Syrian civilians have been killed. Iran has provided money, weapons, training, and protection to terrorists and supported uprisings, coups, and other violence in Iraq, Egypt, Libya, Ethiopia, Algeria, Afghanistan, Yemen, Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Lebanon, Syria, Israel, Kenya, Mali, Somalia, Tanzania, Sri Lanka, India, Georgia, Azerbaijan, Bulgaria, Germany, Thailand, Malaysia, and Argentina. Hey.
Iran, no. Or is that an influence? Yes.
Wow.
And to when or I, Ama Wababe ye. Wababe, the state sponsor. In the third video, no. If we are, Obiam Fantu Nitrimu say question. You did two and say, a dear Hontia, the king of the south, Iran, obey the attack on the king of the north. But you can hear third video.
Your third video, no, axis of terrorism, Iran, Hezbollah, and Hamas. And no third video. Na ye kwa hwa no ana America wo say abapamo say ene ubi a wo pe ade bi ato ye household items ahodo, electrical appliances ahodo, afi cosmetics ahodo, toiletries ahodo ni nyina no momo modia say mobetumi ahwehwe ye abapamo e cha kwan wo bra wo be call wo phone no so wo call Play Store na say Google Store ho a na wa bomodia na say App Store no download abapamo ye o app ni bi onya download wi a wawie ade bi a wo pe bia no so kwa no ayenta ahohare so no wo mo e de be ma ama wo sa tumi aka wo se mo a mo peniema bi na nso mo sika enso no wo hyehyɛ sonko wo ho de be ma mo nyina mo betumi atonyema bi wo isu yam phone so na peniema fra abapamo a bomoden so be from 0555 557193 0555 557193 and 0591 214135 o from mo a ombejo so na de opebia no wonsa atumi aka yanko na yanko share your third video demra axis of terrorism Iran, Hezbollah, and Hamas.
Terrorism network and one of the cornerstones of the terrorist triad that also includes Hezbollah and Iran. Hamas has a long heritage of terrorist activity and is recognized as one of the world's most extreme, dangerous organizations. In the organizational pyramid of terror made up by these three groups, Iran sits at the top, serving as the ideological leader for its two proxy armies, conveniently positioned along Israel's borders. As the ideological mentor of both Hamas in the Palestinian territories and Hezbollah in Lebanon, Iran provides them with indoctrination, training, financing, weapons, and intelligence. Hezbollah and Hamas leaders are frequent and welcome visitors to Tehran, where Iran's religious mullahs set the ideological tone. A tone which is translated into uncompromising terrorist policies to be applied in their respective theaters of operation.
الموت لإسرائيل الموت لأمريكا
عملت دورات بغيت لبنان مش دورات عملت مناورة عملت مناورة بغيت مناورة امتى كانت أول مناورة؟ آخر 2003 وين عملتها؟ بإيران
In a recent interview with Britain's Sunday Times newspaper, a Hamas operative revealed the depth of Iran's role as mentor to the terrorist organization, stating, "Iran is our mother. She gives us information, military supplies, and financial support." The Hamas combatant described in great detail the clandestine process of training, which begins with trainees illicitly crossing into Egypt, where they board flights to Damascus and then travel on to Tehran. There, in highly secured military encampments, they begin a rigorous 6-month training regime under the close supervision of Iran's elite Revolutionary Guards. They learn and perfect their skills in weapons operation, tunnel evacuation, booby trapping, sniper fire, advanced guerrilla tactics, and explosives and rocket manufacturing, like this homemade IED nicknamed Shawaz, which incorporates advanced technological know-how imported from Iran.
They also remain a country that is the primary funder for Hamas, Hezbollah, Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Look at any problem in the Middle East, Iran is funding insurrections.
Iran invests large sums of money in the dissemination of radical ideology, the manufacture and smuggling of weapons, and the provision of financial incentives to terrorists.
It is very clear that Hamas is being armed, and it's very clear that they're being armed in part by the Iranians.
Perhaps the most incriminating evidence of direct Iranian arms transfers to terrorist organizations was the interception of the ship Karine A in January 2002. The ship was carrying a cargo of $15 million worth of advanced weaponry to the Gaza Strip. Apart from its ideological objectives, Iran fosters the militant, subversive activities of its terrorist partners in order to divert international attention from its own illicit development program for nuclear weapons. Iran continues to supply enormous amounts of indigenously made weapons to Hamas by land and by sea. The 122-millimeter Grad rockets that rained down upon the cities of southern Israel during the recent round of hostilities, as well as various types of mortar shells, RPGs, and assault weapons, were manufactured in Iran and smuggled into the Gaza Strip through tunnels running beneath its border with Egypt in the Sinai Peninsula. The possibility of Hamas and Hezbollah operating under a future Iranian nuclear umbrella introduces unfathomable challenges and implications to an already foreboding environment.
Introduces unfathomable challenges. My question is, Iran for inform home. I know
Bible said the king of the south.
Yes.
Now the king of the south, attack the king of the north.
No. Yes.
Na esese oye obi a asema hye ne so ache no afiyesi ensuo tap nche ni a odewo Iran for starting one revolution no mu say Middle East one mo kra ampo no e ho adwododo because muntimi nkomo anim nyina no e che say mo ne western world no mo form a kind of partnership.
Yes.
Ye ko Saudi Arabia e ho uko nkrom tutu oyo no adodo no na America for ni west no in alliance na when munya o mu tete am kan sa mu fa hene nimra odi esika ye nkyere no ye becha mu so manfa na ama no na ma o mu say eni ade emra no be hye nsem ya ye de be na o mu dani so o mu ye revolutionary state and from there no na o mu Kenya nkofo say o pese o ye say eni a de o pese ye be boa ye be ma training ye be o say if is a trona kan to say Krobi free Middle East one ma. Ono obekọ akọka ko. Na ma na akọka ko a. Ono ne West fo Asia. Iran, Korea. Anunti eno omo bo awo mo. Nti ene no identify omo. The king of the south.
Yes.
Nyema awo ye na hobo awo ye. Edomo ebedi na chi. Groups ebeboa no. Na wakọkọ no against the king of the north no. Ene ehu. The question Midija will be answered.
Very rhetorical.
Why will the king of the south attack the king of the north?
Okay.
If we are no best at Yaba, Yamibua.
Next week. Wow. Offer Poku Dankwa, executive director of the Man Free the Mind Movement, and Yamia Tomoa, 24th of next month. A year kita osabo some ne toso di no nine no. Oba Santemantem Kropon Kumasimu. Na awia duminu e was Senate hall no achi wo bakuma so na so nim Senate hall na wo de eno an so du kuma so ko keme de wo hia nsura bia crowd mo kwan no be kire wo ejaka krabi amodu keme ho na no bo so to oni abe ho Senate hall na bu so bia e okay bo so per Senate hall na e be kire na chipe binim so bedu okra na ye gina ho aye director amwako awia duminu na ofa ne domination na the kingdom message na the bromo na the okano wachire eye aman amiensan amiatumi ahunu anasa hindi amiensan no eye king of the north, of the south and then east wa mi ahunu eye Russia Japan omo dwumadi China Russia on dwumadi a ose omo edi afeye Europe Rome onso ehu omo de nene ya ba be hwe south for na ye Iran omo so de na asimo bisa ne say edi enti ana south Iran okako north for no no any free next week kono ye de bebra abusia ebre ntie ka se fa mo kosa ebe ha de mo messages amone baaye no ye be kan e de amamo wo bra ye de mo dwaton de kakra aka no so no e de ka ho e de amawo Isaiah consult said the men can